Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Billyon Richardson with name 21030500001, and today I'm going to discuss a journal about analyzing the speaking and writing competence of an Indonesian student in the USA, a case study. Without wasting the time, let me begin. This case study aimed on evaluating the communicative competence of an Indonesian student who is studying in the USA through his writing and speaking achievement. Now, the spoken data was collected by face-to-face interview through the Skype application, while the written data was collected through email and in the form Microsoft Word file and analyzed with the CC theory. Now, the results show that the participant demonstrated well in both speaking and writing, but it was also found that the participant had limitation in grammar in both speaking and writing as well as fluency in speaking. Therefore, compensation strategies suggested by Oxford can be applied such as coding switching, native speaker, or peer assistant, mime or gesture, avoiding communication, being smart in selecting the topic, adjusting or alerting the message, coining word, and using synonym. The table of content that we are going to discuss is introduction, method, and finding and discussion. Our first discussion is introduction. Let me begin. After the proclamation of freedom in Indonesia, English was chosen as the first foreign language in the country instead of Dutch. Now, the reason was because the Dutch was the language of colonialists and it did not have an international status as English. Given this fact, English has been taught at school, becoming one compulsory subject and treated similarly with Indonesian language in the school curriculum. However, English in Indonesia is still viewed as a difficult language to learn due to the different structure and grammar from Indonesian language. The way it is spoken and written has become the primary problem of Indonesian students in learning English. Nowadays, many Indonesian researchers and lecturers of the university in Indonesia who have a core culture, namely Tridharma Perguruan Tinggi, which require them to do the teaching and research publication, are interested in pursuing their study and career abroad in order to open more opportunities to contribute in the global communities, especially in speaking and writing. It is because writing and speaking are the most crucial needed skill for researcher and academic. So they can do presentation in seminar and conference internationally, give lectures in English, write English research journal and article, and continue their study to postgraduate and postdoctoral study on board. However, speaking anxiety was found from the presentation done in academic setting. The anxiety is caused by the fear of negative evaluation of being criticized in depending too much where appear in the PowerPoint presentation which many researchers and academics do in seminar and conference. Not only that, it is also found that language barrier was one of the biggest challenge from them who pursue their degree in the English-speaking countries. It affects their performance in the classroom discussion due to their limitation in vocabulary, grammar, accent, and fluency. In terms of writing English language journal might cause Indonesian researchers to get rejection. Now, the reason of the rejection was their writing in English was still influenced by their first language discourse pattern. Now, based on the problem mentioned, a case study was conducted to evaluate the communicative competence of a researcher who is studying in the United States. This study, it is expected to perceive his strength and limitation in terms of six communicative competence or CC in speaking and in writing. The theory of communicative competence or CC. Now, the theory of communicative competence or CC was coined by Dale Himes in the 1960s and emphasized that grammatical rules are not enough to produce the speaking and other language skill, now which enable communication. But furthermore, according to Rick Head and Storner within 2008, the CC is not about grammatical language skill, but rather about how communication play a role in the interaction and build relationship in specific communicative situations. Several studies have discussed about the theory. The first is Hakim and Saputra in 2018 have determined that the strengths and weaknesses of learner English as a foreign language by using this CC theory. Second, Pulsawat et al. In 2015, using and interpreting the English language properly based on the situation as well as expressing the attitude toward communication in cultural context. The third and the last is Juan and Martinez Flor in 2008 also used the CC theory as an approach for the learner to acquire the communicative ability but in four language skills such as listening, reading, speaking, and writing. The second discussion is method. Let me begin. The participant of this study was a 33-year-old researcher working in one of a government institution in Indonesia and was studying in the university in the United States. He used Indonesian language both at home and work, but spoken English during his study in the US. He began studying English when he was in junior high school and has spent most of his time in Indonesia. Previously, the participant had taken TOEFL EBT when he applied for university entrance and achieved 82. It means that he was considered to be advanced level. The reason why he was still studying English was that as a researcher, he must read and write English journals. Scientific research findings must be written and published in English even if the researchers are from non-native English-speaking countries. When the participant was in junior high school, he was taught to memorize number of vocabularies. He thought that such learning strategy was difficult for him when encountering some low frequency a word which he did not know the meaning yet. Now, the learner should conduct analysis by elaborating and constructing complex words in order to produce subsequent recall. Related to this statement, the participant agreed that the teacher should have used difficult vocabulary in sentences so he will have been able to understand and use communicative method instead of memorizing, because using English means to communicate and comprehend communication. Data collection and analysis. To collect the data about the participant ability in speaking and writing, he was given spoken and written tasks in an IELTS-like test format. Based on the format of the question in the IELTS speaking test, it can be concluded that the test ranged from easy to difficult. Now, in the written task, the participant was asked to write two models of the IELTS-like written task, academic and general training. Since the participant is a researcher, the academic writing was intended to investigate his ability in formulating language in scientific and academic areas, while the general training writing was intended to investigate his ability in writing in a social context. In collecting the data from the speaking task, the researcher employed the Skype application to conduct an interview due to the considerable distance between the researcher and the participant. From the reading text, the author sent a participant the test material via email, and the data obtained was in the form of Microsoft Word. The spoken data was transferred into a transcription, and after all of the data had been collected, all in all, the online interview and the test material delivery done via email were done successfully and considered the most convenient and affordable instrument for the data collection. The third discussion is finding and discussion. Let me begin. Speaking task evaluation. The researcher conducted a virtual interview with the participant through Skype, which was successfully recorded. The video format was advantageous as it recorded both audio and visual interaction between the researcher and participant, so reducing constraint in transcribing. Social cultural competence. Based on the interview, it was found that the participant had sense of politeness in responding to the author request, and he also introduced himself very formally. One aspect of sociocultural competence is to react in a culturally acceptable and appropriate way within a context. Discourse competence. During the interview, the participant was successfully in connecting words using conjunction when talking and managed to be coherent in delivering his ideas. Despite successfully linking words, the participant used excessive buts and ands in many sentences he produced. In some parts, he also used incorrect pronouns to replace nouns. Dexis is one of the most important parts of this core competence since it links to a situational context and makes pronouns intelligible. This means that the participant failed to demonstrate one important point of CC as mistakenly using pronouns can cause misunderstanding and misinterpretation. linguistic competence. Some grammatical and lexical errors were produced by the participants, such as subject and verb agreement, tenses, part of speech, clauses, and common error in constructing sentences. For example, the participant was supposed to recount his experience about a meeting he remembered mostly in the past tense, but he told mostly in the present tense. CC is not always about linguistic competence, but other varied competencies. However, in this case, he should have been aware of some grammatical rule in constructing sentences. Formulaic competence. There were interesting chunks of words spoken by the participant which were related to the formulaic competence. It is believed that the use of formulaic competence is to avoid negative transfer of the target language and to control the participant insufficient knowledge. Conversely, according to some researchers, the use of formulaic language was largely neglected until the issue was brought to wider attention in research. Interactional competence. When asked by the interviewer, the participant described his feeling and opinion. This is called action competence and is part of interactional competence where a learner exchanges information regarding his information, feeling, opinion, problem, and expression during communication. Strategic competence. One of example of strategic competence where he attempts to repair his speaking ability. The sound of was also included in many instances of the participant responses. It can be considered as a strategic competence device where he showed hesitation and produced the sound in order to take time to recall vocabulary or construct sentences. Writing task evaluation. The written data given was two models of fields like reading tasks, academic and general training tests. The tests were sent by email and they were answered and typed by the participant in the format of Microsoft Word. Sociocultural competence. In the written text, the participant mentioned called Jakarta in academic writing part 2, which indicates his background. He explained the situation relating to the social and cultural experience that he had there. The other places mentioned was Raja Ampat Island, mentioned in the general training writing part 2. Similarly, the participant successfully delivered his idea by depicting the society and culture in Indonesia in the written task. Discord competence. The written data obtained was considered coherent as both texts describe real-world examples as shown in the academic writing part 2. In addition, some transition words which connected one sentences to other sentences and make them into a cohesive text were recognized. Formulaic competence. There were chunks of work encountered. Those were enabled the participant to avoid linguistic component, but the participant mostly used word chunks for academic situation. Linguistic competence. There were several errors found in the written task assigned to the participant. Firstly, subject and verb agreement errors were located in academic writing part 1 and 2, as well as general training writing part 2. Since the grammatical errors were not overly prevalent, participants seemed ignoring them appropriately. The cause of error may stem from interference of the mother tongue. Since in Indonesia language there are no specific grammatical rules in agreement, pronouns, reference, etc., the participant might unconsciously be using the same pattern in his English sentences. Interactional competence. Academic writing and general training writing part 2 require the participant to give opinion, and he performed well in the argumentative task, which is interactional. Interactional competence involved in expressing opinion, problem, and giving information. However, this perspective of interactional could be different. What the participant work could possibly be inappropriate in other interactional communities. Strategic competence. In academic writing part 2, the participant used the word as we know to strategize how he delivered his idea to reader as the effort of interacting. In academic writing part 1, it was found that the participant also paraphrased the sentence in the question into a simpler one. Nonetheless, changing the original sentences into another form may lead misinterpretation, and this could be applicable to what the participant wrote. In conclusion, this study focused on analysis of the communicative competence of an Indonesian student who is studying in one of the university in the USA. The main focus was in the speaking and writing competence. Through data analysis, it can be concluded that the participant demonstrate well in the thesis both in speaking and writing, despite some limitation found in his work, especially regarding grammar, which is related to linguistic competence. Another issue in participant speaking was fluently. It is said that acquisition of speaking fluently is correlated with the opportunity to speak the language. Insufficient knowledge of grammar and pronunciation will result in limited oral competence, fluent but inaccurate. Hence, grammar is considered important in speaking. Therefore, the strategy of the participant in improving his fluency is to use his opportunities staying in the US to communicate with the native speaker there as much as possible. Alright, I think that's all for my discussion. Thank you very much for your kind attention to watch and listen to my video. I'm very sorry if my discussion is not good and I have some mispronunciation in some of my discussion. Thank you very much for your kind attention to watch and listen to my video. Wabillahi taufiq walhidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.